Anyway, we are going into our 7th season at Sterling, and it's been a really great run. We have had some exciting times. We've had some adversity. Last year was possibly the hardest year that we coached relative to chemistry and some of the things outside of our control as coaches that we had to deal with. But I do want to just acknowledge our staff, everything that I've gone through. Chuck, our defensive coordinator, has been with us since we came in, and we have just a fine coaching staff. We only have 3 of them with us today. Our special teams coordinator, Gabe Elisario, who played for us. Brian Fish is our offensive coordinator, all but I think 2 years since we've been here. And Chuck is our defensive coordinator and has been with us since we came. And so I think all of us realize, not only here at the table, but also out there, that football, you might have some sports where it's one guy's show or one guy does all that needs to be done, but it's an impossibility in the football program. So as those of us here who are aiming to build solid, long-term foundations of a football program, I realize more and more, and the older I do get, that our staff becomes the most critical piece of that. And I'm very thankful and have been extremely blessed by them. Also, I want to introduce our new sports information director, Hans Nickel. He comes to us. He was at Sterling a little bit, went back to Wichita State, and has worked with Dr. Crawford in the KCAC office this past year. And our radio guy, Scott Hogan, is here, and he's just a special treat to have around campus and the program, and does a fantastic job for our radio. And we're hoping to take that radio broadcast and dub that onto a live stream of video. Also, I want to just thank Dr. Crawford. Much of the progress of our conference, hopefully at a national level in the future, is going to be due in large part to Scott's effort with our new sport regulation initiative. And as we have had some of the parameters taken away from our practice in the spring and the time that we can be with our student athletes, even in the off season, in the gym or whatever that might look like, is in large part due to Scott's relentless, tireless efforts to pull that off, not just for football, but for all the sports. And I would like to give Scott a round of applause for all his work. Last year we were 6-4. We don't necessarily gauge our success as a program, certainly totally by our record. Would we have loved to have won more games? Certainly. We've probably had teams that have won more games in the past, or as many that haven't been as good or that didn't play as well. But I do think that one of the things that we lacked coming out of last year as we reflected was this idea of what makes a great teammate. And so as we came back in January and have gone through our off-season and our spring practice, that's something that we've tried to help our players understand more and more, is what is it that makes a great teammate. It's one thing to be a great player. It's even one thing it's another thing to be on a great team. But we also are concerned, as well as all the other programs here, about the idea of chemistry and trust, and how that promotes effort of 100 guys at a practice on a Wednesday when it's hot, and all those different contexts that we practice and play in. And so I think for us as we go into the season, that will be our priority, is this idea of the chemistry, the makeup, the internalness of our team as it relates to the kind of teammates that we are to one another. Obviously, though, secondary, we have to be able to play, and we have to have guys who love to play football, who can play football at a conference level, and I think that we needed to address some question marks. We won't know that probably until we get into the first, second, third, fourth games. 2 of the questions that we would have relative to our ability and just the kind of talent level that we believe we need to have to compete at the highest level for us is in the secondary, both at corner and then a replacement at safety, and certainly our offensive skills as it relates to our outside receivers and probably in the slot. And so as we've tried to address that, you can play with great effort, you can be a great teammate, but you still have to be able to run and catch and strike and all of those kind of things that football requires. And so if we needed to get better, particularly offensively and particularly for what we want to do at our offensive skill level, so at our offensive skill positions. And so, Lord willing, we've addressed that. Again, it's easy to say that we have standing here in front of the podium. It's quite another against Southwestern on September 11th at 6 p.m. Our strengths for this year, I think this will be the first time in my career that I can remember our strengths probably being both of our fronts. Defensive line, I think we're going to be as good or better for what we want to do in our three-man front as at any other time that I've coached. And that's important for us, I think, as we try to get better and improve the whole kind of ethos and development of our program. And then I think we'll have an offensive line, finally, that with strength and weight and the combination of that with speed and agility will be an offensive line that we feel like 6 or 7 guys who we can play that we're not looking at who are this much shorter than the D lineman across from them or that much smaller. And so I think that at least we're going to look differently up front on the offensive line, and I'm hoping that because of that we'll actually be able to protect better and to run the ball better than we have. I think the big question for us still remains our quarterback position. I know that football begins and ends up front, but I think we also do realize, and we can look at the teams that have been top in our conference the last 3 or 4 years, and most of the time, not always, but most of the time, they're going to have a quarterback, and even if he's not the greatest athlete at that position in the conference, he will be probably the best playmaker at that position in the conference. And so we've got to have to work through that. We do have in practice we have 3 quarterbacks who will come into camp, who have been on our campus, who have played quite a bit of football, but 2 of them were injured and did not practice in the spring. One because of surgery and one was not injured, but because of some disciplinary reasons did not wear pads. And so I think the question for us going into the season, our starter from last year will be back. His name is KCAC Burbank. We actually liked much of what he was able to do, but because of some different circumstances, I don't think we finished with him as well as we would have liked. And so we have some high hopes for him, but at the same time we realize our quarterback play has to improve and get better as we go into the 2010 season. So that's going to be a great competition, we hope, in the fall between 2 and possibly 3 players. And we would like to come out with a guy who is a playmaker, quite frankly. And we're not sure if we got that all the time. Again, there might have been some good reasons for that last year, but the guys that were playing on any given Saturday aren't concerned about the reasons why our quarterback may or may not be making plays. And so we want to make sure that we address that. We want to make it public and make sure that our team realizes that that's an important part of what we want to get done. And so that's really what we're looking for. I think from an overall team standpoint, our expectations are the same as they always have been, that we're going to aim to be the best possible football team that we can be. There's a process that goes into that every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And Saturday then just becomes a consequence or a result of the things that we do literally every day for those 14 weeks. And so we'll continue to try to improve at that and get better at really every facet of our program, if that's possible, if we can. And that'll be our aim. So anyway, are there any questions?